Alright, now that main power is on in my ship, it's time to finish the last stages of reconstruction. So I, of course, beamed myself back here so that I don't have to help. Hey, Karen. Karen, sweetie. Oh, yeah, right, I forgot. Me and the clones took her offline while we were trying to make sure she was compatible with the ship's computer, and I could finish doing that. That sounds like work. Talking to you guys isn't really work, though, I guess, and I do need to record my next theory video, so guess I'll do that. We're still focusing on Steven's biology and some of the oddities regarding it. But rather than talking more about his birth this week, I want to talk about the fact that I think that Steven, as we know him, might not exist anymore, at least not at the moment. And yeah, I'm being a little overdramatic in my phrasing there, but I do essentially mean what I said. And once again, this comes back to the Guide to the Crystal Gems passage that I reference all the freaking time. And, of course, the scene from Change Your Mind where Pink Steven refuses with Human Steven. A scene which I could honestly dissect forever. First, though, a brief aside. In order for you guys to understand where I'm coming from here, I need to walk you through my reasoning behind a particular, I guess you would say, headcanon, since it's never been specifically confirmed. It was confirmed by the crew at one point that all of Rose became just half of Steven. Everything that Rose was still exists in some form or another, either as the gemstone that she left behind, or as one half of Steven's genetic makeup. Looking at that passage from Guide to the Crystal Gems, Pearl specifically cites the information on Rose's gem. She says in no uncertain terms that Rose took the information sourced on her gem and found a way to convert it into something that would be compatible with human DNA. This is why I've never really liked the theory that Rose used her physical form to transform Steven, that she somehow merged her physical form with the unborn Steven at the time of his birth. Simply put, not everything that Rose was present in her physical form. Her physical form was, of course, a manifestation of what I call appearance data sourced on her gem, but she was so much more than that. Her past forms, including her pink diamond form, information governing all of her abilities, the information which she uses to create her shields, all of her memories, all of those things and more were all sourced on the gem and not constantly represented in her physical form. Claiming that she could merge her physical form with Steven to put all of herself into him in some way or another isn't just saying that I can steal an image file from your computer by downloading that image once you've uploaded it to your Tumblr blog, for example. That's like saying I could steal a 12-page Word document from your computer by downloading the image of just the first page from your Tumblr blog. There is simply no way that Rose could have included all of what she was in the information that she passed to Steven if she simply merged her physical form with his DNA. She must have used the source code information on her gemstone, all of it at once, save perhaps for the information which made her shield. I think that probably stayed on the gem. Otherwise, I don't know why Steven would have the same weapon as his mom. But I really think that that's it, and that the thing that came out of his gem, Pink Steven, was created by some sort of feedback between Human Steven and the gemstone attached to it. So if you take the fact that Rose did not merge her physical form with Steven's, and couple that with the fact that there was no sort of poofing effect when Steven's gemstone was removed, and the fact that before Pink Steven formed, he only cycled through Rose's old forms and not some old form of his own, and I think it's pretty safe to say that Pink Steven didn't exist in any sort of physical capacity until he formed in front of White Diamond in that scene. That up until then, he had simply been information on Steven's gemstone. If I'm right about this, that means that Steven has effectively had two brains this entire time. His fleshy human brain and another simpler, more computer brain on his gemstone, one which governed all of his gem powers. Which means that, yes, of course, I do think he's been interfacing with and communicating with that other brain this entire time in order to activate said powers. I just don't think he was aware of it until now. And I don't think the connection was all that perfect, we'll say. But things may very well be different now. Steven may very well be different now. A physical gem created by his gemstone, fused, body and mind, with Steven's human self. And while this does mean that he has gone back to being, at the very least, something of the person that he was before his gemstone was removed, and for the purposes of the story going forward, it probably just means he's gone back to being the person he was before his gemstone was removed, I think they could very well use this as an opportunity to make him into something more. Steven has gotten a handle on a lot of his gem abilities, but there are still quite a few of them that he doesn't seem to have full control over. I'd be willing to bet, first of all, that there are probably things that his shield can do that he doesn't know how to do consciously, like that neat vibration thing that it did against Lapis's water constructs. I also think he could probably get a better handle on his floating ability. Regardless of how exactly that power works, there's probably other things that it can do aside from allow him to jump really high and then fall back to the ground slowly. And then there's his shape-shifting, which he's always been bad at, despite the fact that he has been shown to convert his body entirely into energy in order to fuse with other gems. At this point, if he had complete control of his gem powers, he should be able to do the same thing in order to shapeshift too, giving him the same range of shapeshifting powers that any other gem might have. And yet he doesn't have the same range of shapeshifting abilities that other gems have yet. He seemingly can't even project holographic clothes around himself, like any gem can. Point is, I think that Steven can use some gem abilities better than others, and he's bad at using gem abilities in general in some cases, because up until this point, he's had to communicate with the consciousness inside his gem in a very indirect way. He has essentially been tossing instructions blindly at someone he didn't even know was there, hoping that they would get them. But assuming that his fusion with Pink Steven was a typical fusion, that shouldn't be a problem anymore. Just like any other fusion, the two minds that make up Steven should coexist now in the same headspace, just like any other fusion's personalities coexist in a shared headspace. Because Steven and Pink Steven are technically the same person, he may not even notice that there's another consciousness in his headspace with him. But either way, Steven and Pink Steven should be able to communicate with each other far better now, which means, theoretically, Steven should have far better control of his gem abilities now as well. He may also be stronger, more durable, able to fuse more easily with other gems and for longer. Not that he really seemed to have an issue staying fused with anyone before this, but I'm assuming there was some strain on his fleshy human body that we just never saw because he never stayed fused long enough. It's even possible that he may find himself with access now to those neat turned up to 11 versions of his powers that Pink Steven used in the conflict with Wyat. In short, I think that Steven fusing with Pink Steven may have turned him into a more complete gem than he was before. And I don't think this just makes sense from a lore perspective. I think it makes sense from a thematic perspective as well. That scene where Steven and Pink Steven reunited was very clearly meant to be analogous to Steven finding himself, discovering himself, and coming to terms with who he actually was. In a story where Steven is consistently rewarded with either new abilities or better control over his existing abilities each and every time he makes a personal discovery, wouldn't it make sense if this, the culmination of all of those personal discoveries up to this point, led to Steven being rewarded with full control of his gem powers, or at the very least, the ability to finally gain full control of his gem powers for the first time? I mean, I certainly think that makes sense. And considering that the show's main conflict up to this point has effectively been solved, if this ends up being the case, it gives the writers somewhere to take Steven's characterization going forward. If I'm right about this, Steven may need to rediscover things about himself that he already thought he had a handle on. That could be really interesting to see. This very well may be one of the plot lines we're going to see next season. And then there's the possibility that Steven is aware that Pink Steven exists within the same headspace as him now, and that the two of them will be able to communicate with each other in some way. I don't think they'll make such a drastic change to Steven's character, or turning him into Yugi or something with an alter ego sitting on his shoulder all the time, but it's still possible and could be interesting in its own way. Regardless of what they do with this, though, I do think that the way that they portrayed Steven reuniting with Pink Steven does leave it open for Steven to be both the same person and a different person all at the same time. And boy, that is not a sentence that you can say about a lot of TV shows, man. I really like Steven Universe. It's pretty freaking great. As per usual though, guys, I'd like to know, what do you think of any of the ideas that I presented in this video? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.